Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Crypto Warehouse. My name is Mike. October the 4th, 2025, and this is Maple Finance Quarter 3 in review. Now, we are streaming on YouTube and we are streaming on Binance Square. Wherever you are, say hello. And if you've got any questions throughout this stream, drop them in the comments and I will try and answer them as we go through this stream. Now, this is going to be a big one. I'm going to try and pack it all in to about an hour. We're going to review the quarter 3 performance of Maple Finance. So July, August and September. And this is tricky. What we've tried to do is we're going to break this into 3 parts. We're going to have a look at Maple Finance first before we begin. And then we're going to take it month by month. We're going to have a look at July, August, and then September. Before that, we will look at June. At the end, we will look at TradingView and go and have a look at Syrup. And then at the end, we're going to go through what we think Q4 is going to bring for Maple Finance. Now, I did one of these about 2 weeks ago, and it was more of a catch-up video. We try and do a catch-up video every 2 weeks. There's too much information, there's too many partnerships for me to cover in videos. I'd be making about 4 or 5 videos a week, and that's simply too much information in too many videos. So we're going to try and compress them into bi-weekly, bi-monthly, whatever we can do, we're going to fit them in. And then at the end of each quarter, we're going to do one of these reviews. A few good mornings to those of you in chat. Good morning to Danny and Hidden Agendas. I hope you're doing well. As I said, if you are here, say hello. Now, we are not going to go through too many more pleasantries because as you can see on the right-hand side menu, we've got a lot to get through. Okay? And this is Maple Finance Q3 in review. We're not here to specifically talk about anything in particular. It's bigger. They currently have $4.57 billion assets under management. Now, they are listed on Binance. They have 2 products over there, Syrup USDC and the token Syrup. Okay, I've tagged Syrup on the Binance Square stream so you can see that token straight away. Syrup USDC is a yield-bearing dollar asset. It's not a stable coin, it's a yield-bearing dollar asset. Both of those tokens are on Binance Square as well as many other exchanges which we won't mention the names of. Now, Maple Finance is not one product. That's the first thing off the bat. They have multiple products. The first one, of course, is the liquid yielding dollar, paying 6.9%. That was 6.4, then it was 6.7, now it's 6.9%, just under 7%. Incredible. As well as that, they have multiple other offerings. They have high yield, they have blue chip, and I've said this every stream. My favorite is the Bitcoin yield product in partnership with CoreDAO. That is yielding about 5.4% on Bitcoin. You can see here we have the high yield paying 10.2%, the blue chip paying 6.8% yield, and the Bitcoin yield is 4 to 6%. Now, of course, one thing to bear in mind with the Bitcoin yield product, you need 25 Bitcoin to get involved with that because Maple really are an institutional platform. They are not set up for Bitcoin yield or any of their loans for individuals. They are institution grade products. Now, of course, Syrup and Syrup USDC listing on Binance, that's where you can get into and actually take share of Maple Finance. That's why they offer those products. So I'm trying to do this as quickly as possible, but also as clearly as possible because there's so much to get through. Now, the way this works is very simple. They are approaching $10 billion in assets borrowed. $10 billion. They have 100 borrowers. They've issued over 400 loans, and the funding time is 24 hours. They are not newcomers either. They have been around since 2021, 2022. They've been around since the collapse of FTX. They've been through the bear market. They've come out the other end. They are battle hardened. Okay, this isn't a new product. This is something that's been around for a while, but 2025 has been the year of Maple Finance, the year of growth for Maple Finance. So that's the first thing, a bit of an overview of what they do. They have blue chip investors that use their assets as collateral. They take out loans against those assets, and then the yield from those assets is paid out to you in the form of Syrup USDC growth, and of course they take a share of that to grow their own products and grow their own teams. Now, we're going to move on very quickly because there's a lot to get through. And the first thing I want to start with is the growth, the explosion of growth. And this chart never ceases to amaze me, okay? And that is the assets under management that Maple Finance have. And again, one thing that I want to cover on this, I need to make this a lot bigger so you can actually see it in depth, is if we go back to when we first started partnering with Maple Finance, they were on $470 million. As of today, they are up to $4.6 billion. So they've 10x'd their assets under management in less than a whole year. They've done it in 9 to 10 months, okay? Incredible performance. And again, you could look at this. You're used to seeing rug pulls, you're used to seeing meme coins, you're used to seeing this kind of price action, but you're not used to seeing this kind of price action on institutional grade companies. There's a difference, okay? This is not a meme coin, okay? This is a serious business, and my explanation of this is very simple. They are an ever-expanding product and company in an ever-expanding industry, which, loosely termed, is real-world assets. That's probably the biggest play of the 2025 bull run. Real-world assets, tokenization of assets. It's the big thing. It's the one where the money is going. We're going to talk about plasma in a little bit towards the end, but this really is the real deal. Now, of course, we are honored to be partnered with Maple Finance, and we don't want to partner with people that we don't believe in, first of all, but then to be partnered with somebody we believe in that have gone through such an incredible 12 months is fantastic. It makes me proud to be associated with Maple Finance. So the period that we're going to cover today really is from, if we get this to the right date exactly, this is the 1st of July. They were sitting at 2.5 billion. 2.5 billion on the 1st of July. And this is going to cover the period to about here, which is right at the very end here. Let's just call that 4.2 billion. So they've grown over 50% in that quarter. Incredible. But again, not unexpected. And we did this review back in the beginning of July. The goal for the company was to get to $4 billion by the end of 2025. Okay? $4 billion by the end of 2025. We're currently sitting at 4.56 billion, and we're the 4th of October. Okay? My target, of course I'm going to be bullish on this company, is 5 to 6 billion. And I think we should err on the side of caution and look at 6 billion, because if we can do 2 billion growth in 3 months, we can easily do another 2 billion growth in the next 3 months. So I think maybe even 6 billion is conservative, but I think 6 billion is the target for the end of the year. And that's a 30% growth from here on in. I think that's easily achievable, especially when you consider the breakdown of the assets under management, because the one thing that should stand out to you here is the growth of this orange area. Okay, this is the growth of Syrup USDC. the yield-bearing dollar asset. That's the one that's really taken off. I mean, yes, you can look further down and you can see that the other areas here, high yield secured, that has grown, Bitcoin yield, they've all grown, but they've also all been dwarfed by the performance of Syrup USD. And I think that's simply because the rollout of that, which we're going to cover now, the rollout of that has just been so successful. Multiple chains, multiple partnerships, multiple DeFi platforms, multiple new platforms that didn't exist back in the beginning of July that now exist, that they're live on. So they've pretty much hit every branch of success on the way down. And I think this is absolutely incredible. But we are not here to just look at a pretty chart. We're going to go all the way back to July. And we're going to start with the first of the collaborations. Now, bear in mind, I can't include every collaboration in this video, and I can't cover every single thing that they've done. There's just too much. We're looking at 3 months, 12 weeks. On average, they do 2 to 3 announcements a week. That's 24 to 36 announcements. It can't be done. So we've narrowed it down to about 7 or 8 of the big ones. And we're going to start with this one. This is Maple and Ethify bring restaking into institutional DeFi lending. WeETH is available as collateral. This was back at the very end of June, so the very 1st of July this went live. Maple Finance, the leading on-chain asset manager, today announced support for ETHFI's or Ethify's WeETH as collateral for its lending platform. This strategic integration introducing a new institutional liquidity venue for restaked ETH holders, allowing qualified borrowers to access USDC loans while earning ETHFi incentives. For the first $50 million in loans, backed by WeETH, Maple will offer a limited time 2% APY rebate in ETHFi. Loans are over-collateralized, carry a 2-month term, and require a $5 million minimum size designed for allocators, treasuries, and professionals, market participants engaging in Ethereum's evolving staking economy. Now, of course, the beauty of Web3 is to have frictionless loans, frictionless DeFi, frictionless movement of assets. But what you also have to understand from Maple's point of view is they can't offer loans and their products to absolutely everyone, because they are institutional grade, but they're also dealing with TradFi. TradFi and Web3 partners still have to go through the same KYC, AML, all those kind of checks. So Maple, rather than having 100,000 clients who have maybe $10,000 or $20,000 plus, they can't cope with that, and nobody can really cope with that, in all honesty. So what they have done is they've aimed at minimums. As I said a minute ago, 25 Bitcoin is the minimum you can invest in their Bitcoin product, which I think is about $2.5 million, $2.7 million about now. The loans have various different minimums depending on the platform and depending on the partner. In this case, it was $5 million. Now, Sid is everywhere. Sid Powell, the CEO and co-founder of Maple Finance. There isn't a week that goes by that you don't see him on X talking about the various different aspects of Maple Finance. He's been joined by a few other members of the team. They have been talking about this as well. And again, this is how it should be. This is what you want. You want your CEO front and center. You hear people talk about building in silence. It's absolute nonsense. You don't build in silence. You build in public. You advertise yourself. You are Maple Finance. You're the face of Maple Finance, and that's what you should be. So you're going to see Sid's name throughout the course of the stream today. I've got some messages in chat, which I'm going to check in a second. As staking continues to mature, we're seeing restaked assets like basically wrapped ETH take on a more central role in how institutional capital allocates on chain, said Sid Powell. This integration reflects our long-term view that staking is not just a yield source, but a foundation for the next generation of collateral and credit markets. The launch also marks the first step for Maple in Maple's broader roadmap to support Ethereum staking and restaking assets across the product suite. As institutional demand for on-chain yield and capital efficiency increases, Maple continues to expand their infrastructure for scalable, compliant and transparent financial activity. Now, one thing I want you to understand as we go through this stream, Maple will look at assets which contain value. They will look at tokens that contain less volatility potentially than lots of others. And what I mean by that is Maple will allow institutions to lend against Bitcoin, and in this case staked Ethereum, but they also allow collateral from the likes of Hype and XRP. So one of my things that I will wrap up in the conclusion is the expansion of the assets that will be allowed to be used for Maple institutional partners to use as collateral for their loans. And that's really the switch that they started to make at the start of this year from solely Bitcoin. Then we saw Ethereum and XRP and recently Hype. So that's something to bear in mind. As assets mature, one of the things about assets maturing is they grow. So if you look at XRP, it has a $150 billion market cap. If you look at Ethereum, it has $400 billion market cap. Bitcoin, $2.5 trillion market cap. These assets aren't going to disappear tomorrow, and they're certainly not going to disappear over the lifetime of a loan, which is in this instance the most important thing. And remember, over collateralized. What that means is if you want a $50 million loan, you are likely to have to put up $75 to $100 million worth of assets. That's what over collateralized means. You have to deposit more than the loan that you're taking out. And that's another reason why I think a lot of what Maple do is successful, because they're risk averse. That's basically they're against any level of risk. Now, I'm going to have to make this a lot bigger for you because this is Chainlink. And one thing Chainlink are great at is being an oracle and CCIP. One thing they're not great at is their blog. So just give me 1 second. We need to make this a lot bigger so we can see. Now, I'm going to go through the messages in chat first and see what people are saying. BB, the token price we're going to get to in the end, because, again, you're absolutely right. We're going to talk about the token price at the end. Good morning, Manjeet. I hope you are well. Now, this isn't going to fit on the screen too well. Chainlink works with Apex Group, Coinbase, Maple, and other major stablecoin issuers and tokenized assets industry institutions. In a recent space, and there's a raft of people on here, the summer leaders are shaping the new monetary layer. Tokenized assets and stablecoins represent the largest opportunities in the blockchain industry, with combined demand estimates reaching into tens of trillions of dollars by the 2030s. According to realworldasset.xyz, a very good source of information, the tokenized asset space is rapidly expanding, with a growing variety of real-world assets being brought on-chain. Simultaneously, stablecoins have become foundational to on-chain economies, enabling frictionless global value transfer and financial innovation. Now, again, my job on this stream is not to sit here and read to you. It's not Jackanory. This isn't bedtime stories. I'm explaining why these things are so important. The first one then is on-chain lending platform Maple Finance expands to Solana with Chainlink. On-chain asset manager Maple Finance, $3.2 billion assets under management. This was an August announcement, updated on the 1st of September. But this happened in August, okay? We've done July. That was the big one from July. We're now going to look at August. And again, these things roll out over a period of time. So Maple adopted a cross-chain token standard to make the $900 million plus of Syrup USDC natively transferable across Ethereum and Solana. And again, this is the next big move that they made. Users can natively mint the yield-bearing stablecoin on Solana. And again, one thing I want to make very clear right now. Because of the Genius Act in America, we no longer refer to Syrup USD in any of its forms as a yield-bearing stablecoin. It is not. The Stablecoin Act in America makes it very, very clear that you're not allowed to generate yield on stablecoins. It's partly to protect the banking industry in America. So, the likes of Tether and Circle are not allowed to give you yield. They're not allowed to pay you 3 or 4% yield. So what Maple offers, and again, we're going to get onto this later on, is they are a yield-bearing dollar asset, or a yielding asset. No longer called a stablecoin. But back then, they were called the stablecoin. Now, what this did was this allowed Maple to be present in the two biggest chains. Okay, forget XRP and BNB, we know about them. But in terms of transactions and users and assets under management and growth, if you were to pick two chains for Maple Finance to appear on, it'd be Ethereum and all of its layer 2s, and of course Solana. That's pretty much 80-85% of the market wrapped up there. And this was the first defining moment in Syrup's history where I think it went mainstream. Okay, we can look back, we can look forward, whatever you want to do. This moment here is when Maple went mainstream. Getting onto Solana, and we're going to cover a few more of these in a minute, this was the move. Now, if you're going to go multi-chain, you're going to use Chainlink, and you're going to use CCIP. CCIP allows for the movement of assets across chains, and that's what they did in August. And this was the most bullish moment in the year for me when I saw this at this time that it happened. Okay, we've had defining moments along the way. You know, we can go back before July the 1st, and Cantor Fitzgerald for me gave me goosebumps. That's how big the Cantor Fitzgerald deal was for me. Now, maybe if you ask Sid or any other member of the team at Maple Finance, maybe that wasn't their defining moment, but it was for me. Cantor Fitzgerald, that partnership for me, that broke the mold. This was the one where I went, okay, Maple are not playing around. This is a serious move. So that was the second thing that happened. Now, the next three that I'm going to cover, Drift, Pendle, and Camino, are all kind of tied into this Chainlink partnership. So we'll start with Drift. There isn't really an order that we need to do the August ones in. They all happened in August. You know, this was like just a series of blows that happened one after the other. Every week there was a new partnership. Orca obviously were also heavily involved. So this was a big deal. Just keeping an eye on chats. There's lots of people looking at the Syrup price, which is good. And again, like I said, if you've got questions along the way, like BB had about the price, ask them in chat, and we'll go through this at the end. Maple launches yield-bearing stablecoin collateral on Perp's DEX. Drift, again, let's not use the word stablecoin too much longer. Let's get rid of that as well. Maple Finance, the on-chain asset manager overseeing more than 3.1 billion, unveiled a new product today that let traders on Solana's decentralized exchange Drift earn yield on collateral for Perp futures trading, per a press release shared with the Defiant. The launch enables traders to earn 7 to 8% annual percentage yield by using Syrup USDC, Maple's dollar appreciating asset. With a $936 million market cap. That's the size of this way back at the beginning to middle of August. We're now in October. It's exceeded $2 billion. So that's the growth of just that one product. The feature lets traders earn extra income or reduce trading costs As stablecoins used as margin on DEXs generally do not earn yield, Maple's CEO Sid Powell said this integration aims to address the gap and improve capital efficiency. Bringing Syrup USDC to Drift as a margin asset is about maximizing returns on traders' capital, Powell told The Defiant. Regardless of sitting idle or actively trading, their collateral should work for them while scaling with their needs. Drift is a perps-focused DEX on Solana with 1.21 billion in TVL, ranking second by perps hugest trading volume of Solana after Jupiter, and fifth amongst perps DEX across all chains, according to DeFi Llama. Now, Drift was a good one for me, and what was interesting is a lot of people that come to Solana, they kind of go through the same route. And what Maple did was they didn't go through the same route. And everything Maple does is surprising. But it's not surprising in anything. It's not unusual. It's surprising in the way that they have cherry-picked their partners. So, Drift, Protocol, absolutely. Camino Finance, absolutely. Orca, absolutely. They've cherry-picked who they're going to work with on Solana. They haven't just carpet-bombed the entire chain with partnerships. And Drift, for me, was a really good choice. So was Camino Finance. And, of course, using Orca. For me, I've used Orca for probably about 5-6 years. Using Orca as well to help the transition is fantastic. Now, Chainlink was an obvious choice for bringing the assets across, but then choosing those particular partners in that order on Solana means we're not. They know what they're doing, but they know what they're doing from the Solana point of view. Okay, they didn't just open the yellow pages and pick the top 4 protocols to work with. They've been very specific with who they're working with, and they've picked, in my opinion, absolutely the right partners, including Camino Finance and Drift. That, for me, was the right choice. It plans to expand the USDC, Syrup's USDC as a yield-bearing collateral to additional protocols in the coming months. We don't need to talk too much about this because we don't have an awful lot of time. But this was, again, another massive deal, in my opinion. Not necessarily in terms of the volume that it's going to generate, but in terms of the fact that this is a serious platform used by serious individuals. That's what I would classify that as. Now, this is the one which, again, excited me more than anything. And again, let's make this a lot bigger so you can see this. Now, my 2 favourite platforms on Solana are Jupiter and Camino Finance. That's it. If I had to be left on a desert island with 2 platforms, it would be Jupiter and Camino Finance. And I think they work hand in hand with each other. And I think they are both exceptional platforms led by exceptional individuals. And Syrup USDC appearing on Camino Finance was just mind-blowing for me, because that's who I've been using. I was in on TGE with Camino. I was in before TGE with Camino. I'm still with them. I've got my Solana, my liquid Solana, staked with them, earning sometimes 8%, sometimes 16%. They offer everything. And they are where Jupiter aggregate the volume for your transactions. Camino aggregates the DeFi across Orca, across Radium, across Meteora. Camino is, for me, the hub of that side. Jupiter is the hub for trading. Camino, for me, is the hub for DeFi. So when Maple went with Camino Finance, I was like, well, this is it. This is like, they've got it. They've absolutely nailed it. They've nailed it with Drift. They've nailed it with Pendle, who we'll talk about in a minute. And they've nailed it with Camino. Kamino has just onboarded Syrup across Kamino Lend, Multiply and Liquidity, giving users access to Maple's institutional USDC yields natively on the Kamino platform, powered by, again, Chainlink, who we've just covered. To fuel the launch, we're running a full-scale growth campaign alongside Maple, Global Dollar Network, USDG, Jito and other partners, with rewards totaling $500,000. Here are the key points. So its institutional yield, 6.5% is now 6.9%. 4x multiples available. Again, some of the multiples on here went, I think it was up to 32, 35% if you looped it over on Kamino. 30 million in on-chain liquidity to enable efficient buying and looping of USDC available on Kamino Swap, and 500,000 in incentives. So this was another knockout deal for me, for Kamino, and of course for Maple. And again, what really started all of this off for me before Maple got there was stables didn't really generate a massive yield on Kamino Finance. It really started with PayPal, PYUSD. They started to offer incentives and get paired against USDC and USDT over on Kamino Finance. And then within a very short space of time, we started to see the Maples of the world and other platforms moving over there. And you went from earning 4%, 5% on your stables. And now, as I've just said, with looping, you can get 25, 35% plus on your stables. Now, I don't believe that's going to last forever, ever. I've said that in other videos. In the bull run, nobody really wants to hold stables. So they have to incentivize you. You're not going to sit on $1 million when the market is ripping. You might sit on $100,000 and have 900,000 in Bitcoin, Solana, Ethereum, whatever it might be. So they have to incentivize you to hold stable coins. In the bear market, everybody wants to hold stable coins and nobody wants Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana. So then they don't need to incentivize you, so those yields will drop. And what sets Maple Finance apart is its bull run, bear run agnostic. It doesn't care which market it's in. It's still going to be 6.7, 6.9%. Maybe it moves a little bit, 0.1, 0.2% here or there. But it doesn't matter if it's the bull market or the bear market, you're still going to get 6.5%. Whereas with the other incentives, they're not going to be offered, so they will drop. And Maple will simply ride the wave. Now, this is the last of the three for, hang on a second, August, and this is Pendle. So let me check. Okay, so Syrup USDC launches new Pendle market with maximum drips. New Syrup USDC market on Pendle is live. Maple introduces a new Syrup USDC market on Pendle with the highest drips multiplier available. The market, running through October the 30th, offers 7% plus net APY with a 5x boost on drips, rewarding, making this one of the most capital efficient opportunities for holders. Based on the previous 100 million AUM market performance, which scaled to 12% total yield, the enhanced multiplier incentives create multiple paths to higher returns in Pendle. Now, one thing I didn't cover in the June review is the revenue of Maple Finance. And after this, I'm going to show you that because it's important. Now, the one thing you should always ask yourself is this. If Tether and Circle can average 4 to 5% from treasuries, US treasuries, how are you able to earn 8 or 9% with Tether and Circle? Where does that extra yield come from? And then look at Maple Finance. Well, the Maple Finance works is as follows. They take or give over-collateralized loans to institutions. And then those institutions have to pay Maple Finance interest on that loan, say 8, 9%. Maple then pays you 6.5, 6.9% from that 8%. And then Syrup, USDC, appreciates in value for that 6.5 to 7%. That's how it works. And the 1% or 1.2% extra, that's what Maple's revenue comes from. So they take a percentage of the pie, you get 85% of the pie. So I can explain to you in great depth exactly how you get your revenue or your increase in asset value. I can tell you exactly how Maple do it because, of course, they're an institutional platform. But the question always remains is, where does PayPal, for example, where does PayPal get the incentives from to pay you 12%? It can't go on forever. And that's what you should be really, really interested in, because at the end of this bull run, you're going to want somewhere to park your gains, and you're going to want to park it somewhere that isn't going to fluctuate. We all know the exchanges that will offer you 18% on USD for putting the money there, and then the bear run comes and it's down to 3%. We all know those platforms that do that. They're all out there. With this, you wake up in the morning, it's 6.9%. You go to bed in February, it's 6.8, 6.9%. It very rarely changes. That's the difference. I can tell you exactly where this comes from. You can't say the same about other stable coins. So this went live with a drips boost. Now, drips run in seasons, and you convert your drips into syrup tokens. That's how it works. And it's an extra incentive for you on top of the 6.9% that you get from Syrup USD X or whatever version it is. And Pendle is one of the hardest platforms to explain to a layman. So the Oracle, a few months ago, probably back in August, he recorded a video about Pendle that's on our YouTube account explaining how Pendle works. But basically you were going to get about 12% on this, maybe a bit more. And then with the loops and everything else that Pendle can offer, I think it even went up to somewhere around 27%, which is again incredible. And this gives you a breakdown on Maple of how to go through this, how to earn this yield, how to get your drips, how to convert your drips into syrup, maximizing your yield strategies, things like that. Again, we don't need to cover all of this off, but suffice to say, this was the third of the deals that Maple did in August, which I consider to be newsworthy. The Camino deal, the Chainlink deal, Pendle deal, they were all up there. The Drift deal as well, they were all up there. So that's August in a nutshell. Now, how are we doing for time? 11:38, we've got 22 minutes left. And in that 22 minutes, we're going to do 2 September bits of news. Then we're going to do the charts. But before we do any of that, I want to very quickly go back to June. D-U-N-E, not J-U-N-E. Dune. Because I want to show you the revenue of Maple. And again, this is important. We didn't cover this at the start because I didn't think it was important, but now I want to show you why it was important that this, and again, we're going to cover this with the BB's question that he's asked about the syrup price. We're going to cover that as well at the end. So that was their performance of assets under management. Now, what goes hand in hand with asset under management is their revenue, which is here. So this is the monthly protocol revenue. This is what's going into the Maple Finance bank account every month. Now, what happened here is it broke $1 million. Okay, it went from $600,000, it broke $1 million, and it hasn't looked back. We've had 5 consecutive months of over $1 million. Now, I don't know whether we're going to break $2 million in October, but for the purpose of this review, which is only Q3, we're going to go for 1.3, 1.4, and 1.6. So it's growing around about $200,000 a month. This is their revenue from the loans that they issue. And this is their slice of the pie. Obviously, the majority of that revenue gets paid out on Syrup USDC yield returns, but they keep this amount. Now, what this allows them to do is pay for new partnerships. If they need to go and use Chainlink, they will have to pay towards that. If they want to bring on more members of the team, bring on BizDev, bring on whatever, that goes towards that. And again, Maple Finance don't have 1,000 members of staff. They don't. So their overhead is not that great. Majority of what Sid does is online AMAs, where he'll go on to podcasts, he'll talk about Maple. It's not just Sid anymore, there's other members of the team doing the same thing. So they're out and about, but it's not really costing them a great deal of money. Now, what Sid has just done, I think he's been in Token 2049. He's been on another couple of conferences. That, of course, is a cost, you know, several $1,000s to get there and be on stage, whatever else it might be. But it's still fairly well maintained. Their costs are still fairly well maintained. So what I'm excited about is the fact that this growth is sustainable. There hasn't been a massive spike to the downside. It's continuing to grow. And as I keep saying on all of these streams, at some point, there will be a dip. Okay? There will be a dip in assets under management. There will be a dip in their revenue. And that dip will come with a change in market. Maybe it comes during the bear market in 2026, if we get one. Maybe it comes if there's a correction in the price of Ethereum. Maybe we see it then. But I'm not expecting it to go from 4.56 billion to 2 billion. I'm expecting it to go from maybe 4.6 to 4.4 billion. So when I mean a minor correction, I mean a 5% correction to the downside. And that is to be expected because, yes, this growth is fantastic. And yes, they'll probably hit 6 billion by the end of the year. Maybe in February or March, they're at 5.6 billion. That doesn't mean it's the end of the road. Maybe we hit 2 million in revenue in January, but then maybe February, which is a shorter month, by the way, maybe it's 1.9. And then everybody thinks the sky is falling. This is exceptional growth. And I want them to mature as a business. And maturing as a business is finding a stable level of income, which I think they've done at $1.2, $1.3 million a month. So this is healthy. And as you see down here, it kind of plateaued here for a long time. Okay? But this isn't a negative. This is regular income to the business. This is regular income to the business. If they're spending $800,000 a month at this moment in time, they are putting away last month $700,000, the month before $600,000, the month before $500,000. They're going to have several $1 million in the bank, which is a war chest that allows them to expand their business above and beyond what they've already done. So that's important to understand as we look at the September articles, is that they are growing exponentially, and at some point, due to probably market conditions, they will cease to grow exponentially, but then we want to see a period of stability, a period of time where they don't. Maybe they plateau at $6 billion asset under management for the first 6 months of next year before going on towards 10 billion. Fine. That's allowing them to grow as a business. Now, in September, the two that I have picked are Arbitrum, which happened at the start of September, and then Plasma, which happened, I think, towards the end of September. And they're the two big ones for me. Maple's USDC surpasses 1 billion supply amid Arbitrum expansion. The yield-bearing stablecoin, again, it's not a yield-bearing stablecoin, it's a yield-bearing dollar asset, has grown 59% since the beginning of summer as institutional demand accelerates. I don't know why they always use Pepe. I don't know. So Maple Finance, which was 3.5 billion, this was at the start of September. At the start of October, it's now 4.4 billion. So they've gone up 900 million in a month. Surpassed 1 billion in supply on Wednesday. The stablecoin's market cap jumped from 970 early Wednesday to 1.01 billion by the time of writing. The surge marks an 18% increase from 1 month ago and a 59% increase since the beginning of summer. And again, this is their flagship product right now. And when we get into my conclusion in a minute at the end, I'm going to explain why I don't think this is necessarily the end of... I don't think they're going to become Syrup USDC as a business. I think they have more strings to their bow, and that's what I'm going to cover. Crossing the 1 billion mark shows just how quickly demand for institutional grade yield is scaling in DeFi, said Sid. It's a signal that allocators are no longer sitting on the sidelines. They're actively looking for ways to put capital to work on-chain in a safe and efficient way. Powell added that the token acts as a bridge for allocators to do that, and the momentum behind it has only accelerated in recent months. The milestone comes as Maple announced on Wednesday that Syrup would expand to Arbitrum and ETH Layer 2 with a TVL of 3.7 billion. The move builds on its presence on Ethereum and Solana. The launch comes with support from Arb's new Drip Rewards program, which lets users earn Arb tokens when borrowing against Syrup. This feature adds an extra layer of rewards on top of Maple's regular yield. So again, something that we've seen a lot this year is dual yield. Maple do it themselves. You have Syrup USDC, which grows in value, and you have Drips. You have Arbitrum. You have Camino Finance, even yield on the product itself. You can then earn Marinade Finance MNDE. You can then earn Met points. You can then earn KMNO. You can earn multiple times from staking your assets. So dual yield is not new, okay? But it's an extra incentive. If you're getting 7% on Syrup USDX, and they're giving you an extra 2 or 3% in ARB tokens, you're almost at 10%. It's pretty decent. Expanding to Arbitrum is an important step in that journey. It connects Syrup USDC to one of the most active communities in DeFi, where the appetite for leverage and yield is huge, he said. By meeting users where they already are, we're making Syrup USDC more liquid and more accessible, while laying the groundwork, for credit markets that can rival TradFi in scale and efficiency. Again, incredible deal. But we've got one more before we go on to the end game of the show. And this, for me, again, this was one that kind of came out of the blue. Now, if you watched our live streams, we talked about this. We talked about this before it went live and before we even knew Maple Finance were involved. It was a big deal. And at the time when we looked at it, I didn't know it was going to be a big deal, because the article I covered on Plasma didn't mention anything about a go live date or anything else like that. But basically, this is a stable coin layer 2. That's what it is. So crypto lender Maple expands to Tether-backed Plasma. The deployment marks the first Syrup USDT launch beyond Ethereum, as Maple targets 5 billion in assets by year end. I don't think we're looking at 5 billion at all. I think we're looking at 6, and I will fight anybody on that, because we're already at 4.4 and we've got 4 weeks left of October. We could be at 4.6, 4.7. So we go into November, the peak of the bull run, we're going to hit 5 billion. By the end of November, probably 6 billion. Maybe the end of the year, 6.4, 6.5 billion. So again, these just become numbers when you get to this scale. But the point of the matter is that the growth is there to be had. So there he is, Sid. Talking there. Maple launches USDT on Plasma. Tether-backed blockchain built for payments. Users can earn yield and rewards via Midas Vault ahead of Plasma's mainnet launch. Expansion supports Maple's roadmap to 5 billion in assets under management this year. Now, don't forget, what did I say yesterday? I gave you 4 tips, which I don't normally do. And one of those tips is, of course, is it called XPL, which is the native token of Plasma. That's one to watch for me. So let's skip through some of this. Users will be able to deposit the token into a Midas-hosted vault that offers yield, while distributing rewards tied to Plasma's upcoming mainnet launch and token generation event, which has happened. Future integrations with decentralized finance protocols on Plasma are planned as the network builds out. This launch underscores our excitement over Plasma and its importance as payments ecosystem, said Sid Powell. I told you you'd see a lot of Sid today. He added that distributing yield-bearing dollar products across chains is central to Maple's push to grow liquidity and hit $5 billion. Plasma is designed to process transactions quickly while focusing on USDT as its base asset. For Maple, the chain's infrastructure could provide a natural fit for products like Syrup USDC, which package stablecoins into vaults that generate returns. The launch continues a year of rapid growth for Maple, which has already expanded to Solana and Arbitrum. Its product recently crossed $1 billion in supply, underscoring the demand. Now, again, this one for me was surprising because it came out of the blue. And just to give you an idea of the appetite for Syrup on Plasma, there was an initial $200 million, and that sold out in 55 seconds, or as I keep saying, gone in 60 seconds. Okay, $200 million in 60 seconds. That was it. And the one thing that I think I want you to take away from this is, today's stream is, institutions have a lot of assets. They can't really operate without assets. And the two things they can do with their assets is they can earn a yield on their asset, or they can borrow against the asset. What does Maple do? Maple allows you to earn a yield on your asset, and it allows you to borrow against your asset. So if you have $100 million in USDT or USDC, and you decide to put this into Syrup USDC, Syrup USDT, and you earn, for the sake of arguments, $6 million a year from that. $6 million a year, $500,000 a month. For what? Storing your asset in Syrup USDT, not USDT. For example, if you need to take a loan out, you can do that with Maple Finance. You can maybe, if you've got $100 million worth of Bitcoin, for example, let's say you've got a Bitcoin treasury and you want to borrow against it. You know Bitcoin is going to go up in value over time. You don't want to sell the asset, so you borrow against it. You lend against it. You pay your interest. That interest over time will be less than the asset appreciation of Bitcoin. It's a winner. You don't lose your Bitcoin either. So Maple ticks both of the boxes for institutions that already exist. So when they sit down with a Microsoft or an Apple or whoever and say, you have $200 million worth of Bitcoin on your books, we can give you a loan against that. Or they can say, you've got $200 billion worth of Bitcoin, why don't you put it into our Bitcoin yield product and earn 6.4%? So they've got the market tied up. And when everybody else is looking at tokenizing stocks and shares, Maple are cleaning up. They are cleaning up. And they're going to get to the point where they become the chain link of assets under management, lending platform. They are going to become the number one. They're going to become the alpha of what they're doing. And they're doing it in plain sight. And they're doing it with nobody really watching what they're doing. And that is probably one of the reasons why we're going to look at in a minute with the token price. But the company's performance is outstripping the token's performance. The company's performance is growing silently in the background. Everybody's looking at Pump.Fun. Everyone's looking at World Liberty Financial. Everybody's looking at Plasma. Everyone's looking here. Maple are sitting in the background, slowly growing as a business, and a $4.5 billion business at that already, without even getting to the end of this year. So that's where we are with the articles. I think we've kind of summed up the top partnerships that they've had in the last 3 months. Remember, this is only 3 months. We've got EtherFi, lending against EtherFi. We've got Chainlink, we've got Drift, Pendle, Camino, Arbitrum, and Plasma. I think that's pretty much the best ones that they've picked so far. And they've got more. They didn't stop. They're continuing against in October. I think they've done 2 partnerships this year also. It's just crazy. Now, we don't have a lot of time left. And I don't want to overrun too much, but there's 2 more segments left to go. Let me just check. Right, so let's load this up first. Good morning to you all over on Binance. I hope you're all doing incredibly well. Everyone is looking at the syrup price. I will bring up the syrup price here. And then hopefully find the right one. There we go. Absolutely perfect. Okay. Now, this is the one I brought up 2 weeks ago. And this is kind of in answer to BB's question. When syrup hit 2.2 billion in assets under management, that was at the end of June. The token price was at 65 cents. We are now at 4.4 billion assets under management, and the token price is 42 cents. So the token price is down a third, 33% it's down. Okay? Now, I've got some lines on here, and this line here is about the 12th, 13th of October. You all think the bull run started. October has started. Not really. The bull run has waves. And you're going to start with the Bitcoin move. So Bitcoin might go to $140,000 in October. 142, 138, around that area. Okay, 20% up from where it finished September. But that's Bitcoin. Then you get Ethereum. Ethereum moves. And then after Ethereum, you get alt season. That's kind of how it plays out. Now, it doesn't matter what coin we look at. And there are exceptions. There are outliers, of course. But it doesn't matter what coin we look at. We can go and look at Cardano if you want. We can go and look at Chainlink itself. We can go and look at lots of other coins. And what you will find is these coins have been doing this, okay, all year. Peaking in January, peaking in June, peaking again, okay? No coin is going to absolutely rip on its own unless it's an absolutely brand new coin. Asta, example. XPL, example. Pump.fun, another example. These are brand new coins that have been around for 3 or 4 months. They are going to pump until they find their equilibrium. Look at Jupiter. Jupiter has done the same thing as syrup. So when you say, you know, this is absolutely bullish, this is absolutely fantastic, look at the way Maple Finance are growing. Why is the token not following it? Because no token is following it. No token is absolutely ripping to the upside. Now, one of 2 things has to happen. Syrup has to sign a deal with, I don't know, somebody vast, okay? Or Syrup and every other altcoin has to sit in the queue for alt season. Now, my money is on alt season. And what I have up here, I think, is I have my target for Syrup in November. And that is $1.20. Okay? Now, I can go up here and I can give you a price as much as you want. Okay? But let's just look at some facts. It was worth 62 cents at $2.2 billion asset under management. If it's at 4.4 billion asset under management, then the company's size has grown 2x. So if we can get to 62 cents, why can't we get to $1.20, $1.25? Now, this target that I have set up here, this is a moving target. If we get to $6.6 trillion by the end of the year, then this target that I have up here will be up here, just below $2. And a lot of people who are way better probably at TA than I am, they will tell you that syrup is a $5 token. Fine, happy, I'm glad. But we're at 42 cents right now, and we have to look at some realistic targets. The first realistic target that we have to take out in October is this line here, which is 63 cents. And I think we will take it out in October. I think we will go to 62 cents in October. And then I think in November, if November is the end of the bull run, then we are going to see a blow off top. And my $1.20, $1.30 prediction is going to be wrong, and we're going to go above $2, okay? But I understand why a lot of you are concerned about Chainlink, Litecoin, AVAX, Syrup, whatever token it might be. But I always say on our streams, you cannot take things out of context, okay? What happened on all of these different dips, these dips here, they didn't happen just to Maple Finance's token. They happened to the market. You know, we wicked down below $100,000. We wicked down to $100,000. We wicked down to $104,000. You look at Bitcoin overlaid on this chart, and Bitcoin is following the same kind of pattern. Okay, same with Ethereum. Ethereum topped out at $5,000. Everyone was crying, why isn't my coin pumping? Why isn't my coin pumping? Because Ethereum was undervalued for so long. Ethereum should never have been $1,300, $1,400, and it should always have been over $4,000 when the ETF staking was live, okay? And everybody's been buying it because they're expecting ETF staking to be live, so of course it's over $4,000. But it should never have been $1,300, $1,400. So it was playing catch up. XRP is at $3 because the court case is over. So you have different circumstances for each coin. But look at Solana. Solana topped out at $300 and now it's down at $230. It's down almost a third. It came down to $200, so it was down a third. Syrup is down a third. So we've got to look at the context of the markets. And for me, I haven't sold one Syrup token since I bought them. Okay? I bought them. I sold in April when it peaked. And then I got more Syrup in July, I think it was. I think at the beginning of July I bought back into Syrup. I haven't sold a single one since. Okay? Because I think it's going to go an awful lot higher. So, I'm not worried about the price. But also, as I've said many times on the stream before, a performance of a company and a performance of a token are not directly interlinked. There are, of course, specific examples where they are. But on the whole, you can have a company performing incredibly well and the token price just not reflect that. That's why everything has different prices. You know, not everything. You can have a product or a project in an industry which isn't liked, and then the value of the token, the profit that you can make on that, the dividend will be higher. There's a lot more scope for growth. So I'm not concerned at 42 cents. Okay, not concerned at all. We broke into this at the beginning of June, July, August, September. It's 4 months. Back then, if we go back towards May, we were down at 20 cents. So we've come a long way. The token was at 14 cents in April, maybe, beginning of April. We're at 42 cents now. It's 3x'd since April. It did 4x. Now it's 3x'd. Expect it to go up. This is not a token that is going to go to zero. It is not a token that doesn't have a business behind it. And I know I do a lot of tweets, and I've also mentioned in those tweets that I don't look at the price of Syrup in tweets because I want to look at the business. But when we do these streams, I'm not going to ignore the price of the token. I think if you get $1.20, $1.40, $1.60 for your Syrup token in this bull run, I personally would take profits, and I would advise you to take profits because it is tied to the crypto market. So if we have the blow off top in November, December, and let's say syrup goes to $2, you take some profit. Why? Because it's likely to come back towards 50, 60 cents. If you love the project, you buy back in at 50 or 60 cents. You'll get 3 times the number of tokens. If you sell at 2 and you buy at 60 cents, you'll get three times the number of tokens. If you hold 2,000 tokens today, you sell at the top, you'll be able to buy 6,000 tokens. Think of it that way. I'm never going to sit here and say, hold this token for the rest of your life, because that's not how it works. Now, what I'm going to do is I am going to go up to... I'm going to go on to full screen, and I'm going to give you my conclusion, which is what you're all here for. So what does Q4 mean for Maple Finance? Q4, the last 3 months of the year, we're going to get the end of the bull run. If the bull run stays on the 4-year cycle, then we are potentially 4 to 6 to 8 weeks away from it, and then it's game over. Okay, so we've got 2 months left at most of the bull run. But Maple Finance isn't just here for this bull run. It's here to grow and expand. Real world assets are going to be here in 4 years' time. Don't worry about that. And I've said some of my picks before. Syrup BTC. It doesn't exist yet. Okay? I'm expecting them to launch a Syrup BTC project. Or product, sorry. I expect that to offer somewhere in the region of 3 to 4% yield. Number 1. Number 2, I expect Syrup USD in one of its forms to be listed on all of the major exchanges, or 90% of the major exchanges, by the beginning to middle of next year. So if you're sitting in Binance right now, you've already got Syrup USDC. You can go and stake and earn 6.9% today. So if you've got $5,000 in Tether or Circle, put it into Syrup USDC and earn 6%, 7%. It's a no-brainer. You already know about Solve Pro. 6 billion is on the cards for the end of this year. The token price, my target is $1.20. We're at 42 cents now. We've been at 65 cents. I'm not calling for the moon. I think $1.20 is the target for this token. I will be taking profits at $1. Just putting that out there. So that's where I think we're going to go with Syrup. And what I'm going to try and do is do these streams every 2 weeks. Now, obviously, this was a slightly longer stream, slightly more content, because I was trying to do 3 months in one go. In the next stream I do in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to focus on what's happened in the first 2 weeks of October. Then at the end of October, I'll focus on what's happened in those 2 weeks. So 2 streams a month, just on Maple Finance. And then the last stream of every quarter will be a quarterly review, not a 2-week review. And that's how I'm going to try and do it. I can't make videos. There's too many. I could have picked 20 different partnerships over the last 3 months. I could have picked 30 different things to talk about, 40 different things to talk about. I can't do them as individual videos. So these live streams, which are recorded for Binance and recorded for YouTube, they're going to be my reviews of Maple. And it's going to be performance, it's going to be partnerships, and it's going to be token, and it's going to be predictions. That's the format this is going to take. We've done this in 1 hour and 10 minutes. A big thank you to everybody that's turned up. A big thank you to Manjeet, Tariq in chat. A big thank you to BB, Danny, Hidden. I hope you're all doing well. Lots of people over on Binance. Crypto King, DJ, Cindy, Ibra, Nicolette. Thank you everybody for tuning in. It's been a whirlwind of a stream. I normally do about 6 or 7 articles in a live stream. I think we've done about 10 or 12 different bits of information. So thank you everybody for tuning in. And I will see you in the next stream. Take care.